So we have seen in the past HTML tables, and now we're learning forms. I have explained to you what is the meaning of a form. Why do we use HTML forms? We use HTML forms to read input from the user in HTML so that we can submit this data to the server and the server can process it. We are going to learn how to process this data in the fourth module when we start learning PHP. But what we are learning right now is we are learning how to place these different controls, user controls, form elements, how to place these different form elements on the HTML page to read data from the user. If you are asking the user to enter the name, then text box is the control that you have to place on the HTML page. If you're asking the user to enter the gender, then a drop down combo box is what you make use of. So basically, this is what we are learning, and we have studied how to place text-based controls, choice-based controls. Now we're learning what are specialized controls. Specialized controls, first category is number and range. Number and range, if you want to place, uh, if you are asking the user to enter a number, if you are asking the user to enter a number, you can always provide him a text box in which he can enter the number. But instead of uh, making it complicated by making the user to enter it from the keyboard, you can just provide him a box like this. You can just provide him a box like this, which contains, you can see here, you can provide him a box like this. In this box you can just use the up and down arrow key to increase the number here or to decrease the number here, and then this number you can have a minimum number. It cannot go below 1, and maximum number that it cannot go more than 5. So you can always make use of this. Okay, just let me very quickly give you a demonstration of this. So I copy that, I go to I go to Sublime Text. I paste that. Okay, and then slash HTML. Simple application. So I want to save this now. I'll go to the D drive. Then I have a folder here called as web. And here I place this form underscore special dot HTML. Okay, so I have saved the file. The name of the file is form special dot HTML. So when I go to the D drive, I'll go to the web, and then here it is there, form special. So when I double click on that, you will see that you will get this. So if I use the up and down arrow key here, I need not enter anything. I don't have to enter. I simply have to use my mouse here to select a number. So the minimum number that I can select from here is 1, and the maximum number that I can select here is 5, because I've written it like that. You can see input type is equals to number you have to write. These are specialized controls. These are specialized controls. Okay, type is equals to number, min is 1, max is 5, name is rate. You have to give some name. I told you that to every control you have to give a name. If I write here max is 500, then if I refresh this, then you know that I can go from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I can go even up till 500. I can go. So I hope you understood why do we use the number specialized form control. After this number, then I can use something called as input type is equals to range, and just copy this, Control C, and I will place it here, the BR tag, and place it here. So I've tried input type is equal to range. Now let us see what type of control this range is. Let us see what type of number this range is. So I 5. The minimum is 0, maximum is 10. So file, save. I come here, I refresh. So you can see range is nothing but this. Okay, so your range is nothing but it's a slider which will allow you to select a number between this is 0 and this is 10, because if you select the minimum it is 0 and the maximum if you select it is 10. Okay, so that is how you can place a progress. You can place a slider like this to select a value. Okay, then after this, we can use input type is equals to color. Yeah, I can use input type is equals to color like this. You would see what will happen if I place this. Okay, so we have this color input type is equals to color. We have input type is equals to color. And then let us see what will happen with this. So I've already placed it here. File, save, come here. I refresh. So you get this. So you get this small palette here to select a color. So in most of the forms, you would want the user to enter a color of the choice, or maybe you're asking the user to enter a color of his choice and all that. So you can place the color control like this. So when you click on this, a color palette will open up from where you can select the color, red, green, whatever you want, you can select it. So this is how we place. These are all specialized controls. In the examination, you can expect a question like this. They will ask you a question like this. They will ask you a question like, explain any four specialized controls of HTML forms. Explain any four specialized controls. So in that case, you have to write about the background. Input type is equals to color, input type is equals to range, input type is equals to number. And then I think there are a few more here. Color is there. Then of course you have date and time. This is the second category. Okay. In specialized controls, the first category is number and range. The second category is date and time controls. So if you want to place input type, if you place something like input type is equals to date, see what happens. Okay. So if I say input type is equals to date, see what happens. So when I come here, I refresh this, you get this. So when I click this, I get a calendar. So if you want to place a calendar, you want the user to enter his date of birth or date of registration of something. If you want to ask a date from the user as input, then instead of providing him a text box, you can always provide him a date control. You can always provide him a date control like that. Okay, something like this. So the user can always select a year, month, all that, So basically he can select that. Similarly, you also have input type is equals to time, only time. So where the user can select time. Input type is equals to time. Now see what happens here. If I refresh, so this is for the time. You can see that from here you can select a time. 1:43 a.m. or p.m. You can always select it from here. So this is for the date and this is for the time. Okay, so this is for the date and this is for the time. Right, the BR tag here. If you go to the next line, so this is date and this is time. Okay, date and time. So we are learning the specialized controls of HTML forms: date, time. Input type is equals to month. You also have something called as input type is equals to month. Let me see. Let us see what will happen if I place input type is equals to month. So you can see from here, I can select only month, nothing else. Nothing else will be given to me. Okay, so I can just select month from here. Just click on that, and I will be allowed to select only month from here. Okay, month also and year also I can select from there. So I hope you're understanding what we are doing. If you want to place any of these controls, then you have to use these. These are important. Input type is equals to time will give you a control to select time. Input type is equals to date will give you a calendar. Input type is equals to color will give you a color palette from where you can select a color like this. Input type is equals to range will give you a slider. Input type is equals to that will give you range will give you slider. Input type is equals to number will give you number like this. So these are specialized controls of HTML forms. Table and form accessibility is the next thing. Why do we use this? Normally, forms are used along with tables. Why? Because I don't want to save you can see here, okay, if I want to create a form like this, beside this, I want, let us say, okay, you are asking the user to enter his name and all that. So if I say name, then I have to write input type is equals to text will give me a text box. Then if I want to ask the user to enter the age, I write age, and then I copy the same thing here and I place it there. And then if I want to write address, then I write for the address, I want text area, so I write text area, and something like this I write, okay, for the form, file, save. So when I come to the form and see here, okay, let me put br tags. I'll put a br tag. If I want the form to come in the next line, basically you know that I have to place like this. Then let us say finally I want input type is equals to button or submit. I want to submit the form, so I write it like this, and I want to place one more br tag here. So basically this is how we design forms. Okay, refresh, so it will come one below the other. But do you think this will look good on a web form? You can see that the name is starting from here, then after that, the text box is coming, then age is here. You can see that these text boxes are not aligned properly. These text boxes are not coming one below the other. And then you have a submit button somewhere here. So the form doesn't look good. So normally what we do is we use forms along with tables. We use forms along with tables. Okay. Normally we use forms along with tables only. What we do is we create a table. Now you look, remember this, see how it displays here. It doesn't display very good because the text boxes are not aligned properly. The name, age, submit button is also not aligned properly. I will now use combination of forms and tables and see now what I do. Okay, so I start the form, then I start a table. You know how to start a table tag. Okay, so I have a table tag here, then I have a tr tag here inside the table tag, then I have a td tag here, then I have a td tag here, and then I have a tr tag here. I close. Okay, so you can see that this is my table tag in which I have one table row, in which there is one table data, and in this I have, yeah, one more table. So you can see this, there is only one row is there in which there are two columns. So here I will do one thing. I will place this name, I'll remove this, I'll place it there. Then I'll take this input type is equals to this, I will place it here. Okay, then in that case I don't require this br tag here. So you must have understood by now what I'm trying to do. I have one row. In the first column I place the text name, and then in the second column I place the text box. Similarly, now I copy this, control C, control C, control V, then I put age, and I place one more tr tag, and then here I place address. So what I'm doing is I'm placing my form into a table so that the output should look good. Input type is equal to, for the address I want a text area, so I write text area. Yeah, I want a text area, and then that's it. I don't want anything else. So I want to remove all that. So I take, so I place one more tr, and in the first box here I don't put anything. In the second box here, in the second td, I put input type is equals to submit. So my first tr in which I'm placing a name and then text box. In the second row, age, text box. In the third row, address, text box, text area basically. Third row, submit. Now see how this looks like. So file, I save, I come here. This is how it was looking before. After adding the table, now see how it looks. So when I refresh that, you can see that it comes properly one below the other. This is more better, is it not? So before how it was looking, you have seen that. I think I cannot go back because I have already saved it now. So when I refresh, you can see it looks much better now. And then if I say table, if I say border is equals to 1, if I say, then it will look a little, I think, more better. So you can see that it actually comes it comes properly in a border like this. So I can have my address bar, my name I can enter. Okay, then I can write the age, and then I can enter the area, and then I can submit this. So you can see that now the form looks better. because all the text boxes are coming one below the other. So this is how we use forms in combination with tables to make the forms look much better, okay, legible, clearly. And then finally, now what is happening is it is getting displayed over there. If you want to place that in the center, you know how to place that in the center. You can place that table in the center tag. So when you say place the table in the center tag, so I close that, I come here, refresh, then you can see that it comes in the center here. So I just need to have a center tag. The table will be placed in the center. Okay, so this is how we use tables along with forms. Then there is a concept of micro formats. Now, what is the meaning of micro formats? I will come to this later on. This is a very simple concept. Only one paragraph is there about micro formats. Only this much is there. Okay, only one paragraph is there about micro formats. There's a small diagram about micro formats. What is the meaning of this? I will come to this later on. And then finally, this is the end of the chapter. So we have finished tables and forms chapter. We have finished the tables and forms chapter. This is a summary of the chapter. What all we have learned. Okay, we have learned what is the meaning of a checkbox. We have learned what is a column span. We have learned what is form, get method, post method, query string, radio buttons, row span. So we have studied all these different things. There are some questions which are there from this question. What are the elements used to define the structure of a table? So we can use the table tag, the tr tag, the td tag, and the th tag. Describe the purpose of table caption and table heading elements. How are row span and column span attributes used? Create a table that correctly uses caption head. So we have learned all this in this chapter here. Then there is some examples here, hands-on. All this is not there for the syllabus. You don't have to worry about that. But sometimes, you know, they may give you a place like this. They will give you a page like this, and they will ask you. Okay, maybe they will not. In theory paper, normally they will not give it. But you have to look at this, and then you have to design your page like this. What is expected for you to do is look at this page here, and then you have to design the page like this. That is what is expected. Okay. So that's about it. After the end of the chapter, you should be able to do these different types of tables, these different types of forms. So you can always place a form like this on the table, how you can place this color, all that I've shown you. You can use simple form elements, and then you can create the forms like this. Okay. So this is what I just wanted to explain to you people. I'll just go back to the syllabus. Sorry, web technologies. Yeah, there it is. So we have started with the second module. We have finished tables and forms, introducing tables, styling the tables, introducing forms, form controls, table forms accessibility, micro format still here. This is the chapter that we have finished so far. Advanced CSS layout, I told you, I'm not going to come to this right now. This I will do it later on. Okay. Now I will start with module number 3. I will do this in the next class. Today I will not start with module number 3, but the plan is I'm not going to continue with advanced CSS formats. These are a little complicated. We will come to this in the end. Once we understand everything, we will come to that, because this requires a little knowledge of JavaScript. Okay. And JavaScript is there in the third module. So we have finished the first module completely. We have finished the second module half. And now we are going to start with module number 3, that is JavaScript. We are going to learn what is JavaScript. Why do we use JavaScript? Okay, we are going to learn that. I'm just going to give you a little introduction to JavaScript, Okay, but completely I'm going to start with JavaScript in the next class only. And then after we finish JavaScript, then we will have to go to module number 4, in which we're going to study PHP. And then finally, module 5 is completely based on advanced concepts of web. Very interesting, very good. 5th module we will be doing. Okay, but first, JavaScript, very important. JavaScript plays a very important role in web application development. Today, there are so many different frameworks that are used to develop web applications. And these frameworks, if you want me to name some, I will tell you. Node is one of the frameworks. Then you have Node.js is there, then you have Angular, then you have React. So many frameworks are there for developing web applications. For all that, you need JavaScript. So what I'm trying to tell you is that JavaScript plays a very important role even today for developing latest web applications. JavaScript. What you are going to learn is you're going to learn the basics of JavaScript. What is JavaScript? How to write programs in JavaScript, the syntax of JavaScript, how to declare arrays, loops, if conditions. We are going to learn all that in JavaScript. Okay, so I will be starting this in the next class. But remember that JavaScript is a scripting language. It's not CSS. What was CSS? You have studied that. Why do we use CSS? Before that, we learned HTML. Why do we use HTML? We use HTML for designing web pages. We use HTML for designing web pages. Why do we use CSS? We use CSS to make our web pages more attractive, giving it style. We give style to the web pages so that they become more beautiful. And now, why do we learn JavaScript? I will tell you, JavaScript is used for scripting something. If I do something on the web page, something should happen. Something should happen in the sense, when I click on a button, the data should get submitted. When I click on a button, something on the background color of the page should change. If I take my mouse over a particular item, then some changes should happen. So basically, if you want to make your web pages interactive, we use JavaScript. So first we learned HTML, we learned some tags of HTML, and we know that HTML is used for designing web pages. Then we learned CSS, and we saw that CSS is used for styling web pages, making your web pages more beautiful. Then now we are going to learn JavaScript, using which you can make your web pages interactive. When the user does something on the web page, something should happen. The color of the page should change, or the data you have submitted in the form should get submitted to the server, or some calculations should happen. If you have two text boxes, you want to add the content of these two text boxes and display the result, so you can do that. So to make the web pages interactive, we make use of JavaScript. Remember that one statement. Why do we use JavaScript in web applications? To make web pages interactive. Okay. And we will understand what is the meaning of client-side scripting and server-side scripting in the next class in detail. But let me give you a little hint about what is the difference between client-side scripting and server-side scripting. I hope you remember this diagram here. This diagram, I had already shown it to you. What does this diagram say? That you have a server here and you have a client here. And then the client will send a request and the server will send you a response. This is the diagram that I will always refer to. I have told you that whenever I start teaching web technologies, this is the diagram that I start with. You have to understand this diagram very nicely. In between here, we have the internet, we have the cloud. The client will send the request, the server will send the response. How will the client send the request? The client will just open a browser, and then in that browser, the client will enter a URL and then press on the enter button. The browser will make a request. The request actually goes to the server. And what will the request contain? The request will contain some request for a page. That page can be a static page or it can be a dynamic page. If it's a static page, you all know the server will simply pick up that page from the hard disk and then send it to you directly. And if it's a dynamic page, the server will first execute that and the result of the execution is sent to the client's machine. I have already told you this. Okay. Now, which are static pages? Static pages are all those pages with extension .html, .htm, .xml, .pdf, .mp3, .mp4. These are all static content. What are dynamic content? Dynamic pages .jsp, .php, .asp. These are all dynamic pages. We will come to static pages and dynamic pages later on. But right now, what I'm going to explain to you is that you have a client's machine here. You have a server machine here. Everything, every script that executes on the client's machine, some script execute on the client's machine, some code execute on the client's machine. Anything that runs or executes on the client machine is called as client-side script. And any code that executes on the server machine is called as server-side script. Obviously, from the name itself, it is clear. What is a server-side script? Any code that executes on the server is called as a server-side script. And what is a client-side script? Anything that executes on the client machine is called as a client-side script. Now, I know by now you must be having a lot of doubts as to what is the meaning of this. Always, sir said that things will execute on the server. Now, I'm telling you that something also executes on the client's machine. But what is that executes on the client machine? We will understand that later on when we start with the fourth module. And in the third module also, you will understand what executes on the client's machine. So remember, in web applications, some part of the code executes on the client machine, some part of the code executes on the server machine. Okay, the code that executes on the client machine is called as client side script, and the code that executes on the server machine is called as server side script. Okay, client side script and server side script. Client side script, the code that you need, the code that you want to execute on the client's machine should be written using JavaScript. The script or the program or the code that you want to execute on the client's machine should be written using JavaScript. And the code that you want to execute on the server side script should be written using PHP. Now remember this, it is very important. I will explain to you how to write JavaScript, where to write it, how to execute it, all that I will explain to you. But right now, in the introduction class, I want you people to understand that whatever executes on the client's machine, is a client-side script, and that script should be written using JavaScript programming language, scripting language. And the script that executes on the server is called as server-side script, and that you should write it using PHP, using the PHP programming language. Remember, JavaScript is a separate JavaScript is a separate programming language, and PHP is a separate programming language. If you want to run some code on the server, you always write it using PHP, and if you want to execute some code on the client's machine, you always write it using JavaScript. I hope this is clear. I hope this is clear with all of you. So in the next class, I'm going to give you introduction to how to write JavaScript, where to write it, and all that I will explain to you. So client-side scripting, what is JavaScript? What can it do? Okay, the design principles of JavaScript, where to write JavaScript, syntax of JavaScript. Then we will learn the objects of JavaScript. Then we will learn document object model, DOM. Then we will learn the events of JavaScript, forms, introduction to server-side development with PHP. Yeah, that's it. Till here it is JavaScript, and then after that, introduction to PHP is from here only. Introduction to PHP. Okay, introduction to server-side PHP development. What is server-side development? All that we will do it in the third module, and then we will go into more PHP details into the fourth module. Okay, so we will stop here today. You will have a better understanding of what is JavaScript, where to write it, and all that, in the next class, because I will give you some examples of JavaScript. I will myself write some programs in JavaScript and I will demonstrate to you. So it will have a better understanding. Okay. So we will